So various corporates are incorporating sustainability throughout their business practices, and Equity Group is no different. In fact, being recognized with some prestigious awards like the Oslo Business for Peace Award, and it's commonly referred to as the Nobel Peace Prize for the business sector. Also including Euro money. And that is exactly what we want to talk about, the success of this under the leadership of Dr. James Mwangi, who's the Group Managing Director and CEO of Equity Group, who joins me on Power Talk today. Thank you for speaking with us on this.
Thank you, Ivan.
So congratulations on all of these accolades, considering the work that you've done in sustainability and corporate responsibility. Tell us about the initiatives that have led to this success.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. Equity embraced sustainability 30 years ago when we focused on social sustainability. And social sustainability was incorporating society as an anchor shareholder of Equity Group. And that is what led us to form Equity Group Foundation and started with massive social investment in society, Wings to Thrive, you remember, Young Africa Works, agriculture, financial literacy, so that we could leave nobody behind. We became a purpose-driven organization. In 2005, that concept of shared prosperity won us the Global Vision Award in Germany during the G8 summit. And then in 2012, it won us the Ernst & Young World Entrepreneur of the Year. Later on, we realized social impact was not enough. We embraced governance. And we said the only way is to embrace governance so that we embrace ethics and such that we become reliable and dependable partner to society. But as time moved on, it became apparent to us that nature was what society is living on. And we felt it was our responsibility to start protecting nature. And we focused particularly on small-scale farmers and looking at their climate-smart agricultural practices to focus on nature. But we realized nature had significantly been destroyed. So we started embracing practices of restoration. And that is how we started, for instance, embracing focus on environment. We started by creating capacity in the group. That's how people like Dr. Helen Gishaw, he joined us to teach us how to protect and restore nature. And to date, we have planted 23.8 million trees in our attempt to restore nature. We embraced our 19 million customers and made them ambassadors. We embraced our 60,000 scholars and the 2,000 schools they are in, and we used them as champions of restoration of nature. And it's then at that point that we realized it was not enough what we were doing. We had to lead and inspire the entire world on sustainability. And to us, sustainability is ensuring our current generation uses the assets of nature to meet its needs without compromising the ability of future generations to use the same to meet their needs. And that is how I joined COMPAC and became the co-chair of COMPAC's African Business Leaders Initiative, so that business learn in front. And that also explains why I led the African private sector during the African Climate Summit in Nairobi, so that the private sector partners with the government. Now, when nature started giving way, the symptoms that first came is climate change. But the climate change is not the cause. Is the symptoms of a destroyed nature. The temperatures are now up 1.5% globally, and we are starting to say it's now not temperature increase, is the world is starting to boil. And the question is, when temperatures in some parts of the world start reaching 40, degrees centigrade. The question is, how long will human beings be able to exist in such areas?
Yes, and Dr. Mwangi, you've raised the important issue about the environment and the effects of climate change. And that's important even for organizations such as yours that are in the financing sector. So tell us about how Equity Group is incorporating some of the targeted initiatives. So we now hear of green financing, we hear of blended financing. Talk to us about what Equity Group is doing in this sector and the impact you feel it has had on the communities you serve.
As we said, the first thing was to champion and to build capability in the bank. So we have now created an entire directorate on sustainability. And this is then to mobilize the entire customer base and stakeholders of equity to engage. But that community of stakeholders needs to be empowered. So the first thing we are doing is literacy. Awareness to communities, and that is why it is to the farmers. We have 300 staff who do nothing but interact with the farmers, teaching them on climate smart agricultural practices, adaptation to climate change, mitigation, whether it is on water conservation, such that it's practical things done at the household level. The second aspect to it is providing every household with cleaner energy devices, because we must address the root cause. The root cause has been use of fossil energy. When you look at households in Kenya, they use firewood, which is the biggest pollutant at the household level. So we have replaced firewood for 680,000 households with clean energy devices. We are now on schools, and we have replaced for 1,000 wood fuel kitchens with sustainable LPG energy, because schools were using nearly 12 million trees in a year. So you can imagine the level of destruction. So by that initiative, you save 12 million trees in a year. When you get farmers to adopt mitigation, adaptation, you start reversing and slowing climate change. But I think to enable that, then that is where then we have developed partnerships globally. We have sought registration with the Global Climate Fund so that green finances become available, cheaper, affordable for those who have initiatives of preservation of nature and restoration of nature. We are financing them with much cheaper financing as a form of incentive. But we realize that is not enough. So we have brought in blended finance. And blended finance is where you bring commercial loans, development loans, philanthropist money, foundation money. So like for the small scale farmers, what we are doing, the philanthropists like MasterCard Foundation, they give grants. And we are using grants to provide credit guarantees for the farmers. They don't need security, so they get access, and that's how we mitigate. Sometimes we are giving grants to those who are in very powerful projects. So that is how we are using climate finance, blended finance. But there are other big projects that we are saying commercial lending is sufficient, but too expensive. So we've gone to the development banks, and that is how we have partnered with the 16 development banks. So we have short-term commercial loans, we have medium-term loans, and we have long-term loans. We have blended tenure of credit. And then we have grants, we have subsidized funds like the irrigation schemes we are doing with KfW of Germany. They give 50% grant, and we give 50% loan, and the government provides everything else to make the project work. So that's how we are tampering with finance. But I think the biggest aspect we are bringing to farmers is helping them to develop the projects which qualify for climate financing. So it is capacitation through training and empowerment of communities to take advantage of these facilities.
Yeah, and that is important to also enable them develop the projects, create their capacity to be able to access
and maybe
the funds that they need.
to represent them globally. As I said, I'm a co-chair of Compact, that's a UN organization on climate change. When climate change comes here, we organize the private sector. So we are using our gravitas to mobilize and to represent them. So we'll be again headed to COP. We were at COP27. We are now headed to COP28, and ensuring their voice is being heard. And if you look, President Ruto was very emphatic that the voice of Africa be brought on the table through the Nairobi Climate Summit. That's what we are doing now for the private sector.
Yeah, indeed, in using your convening power, you know, to empower the voices of those that need it the most. So, I mean, businesses and corporates and governments were moving into ESG, and then COVID-19 happened, which, you know, set the world back, you know, quite a bit. And now we're, you know, focused on building back better. So for organizations that had already been on the journey and then have now been set back, talk to us about what Equity Group is doing in terms of adapting the business strategy to address some of those issues, the socio-environmental challenges, in the context of building back better from COVID-19.
Even COVID-19 was the first disruptor of the entire global structure, which really reflected how unsustainable the world was. Just a small virus stopped the entire world. And you can imagine the impact that it has. It broke all the global supply chains, and essentially it made us question the concept of globalization, the global order, and everything that stood before. And that is what has brought up the reset of the world. The reset of the world is what we are trying to champion, to be purpose-driven. It's not about furthering capitalism. It's furthering the purpose of creating a sustainable world where nobody is left behind and where disparities in poverty are managed so that you don't have absolute poverty and extreme wealth on the other hand. That's what is creating unsustainability. The question of opportunities, that some parts of the world has opportunities and others have no opportunities. The question of like has been raised, access to finance. Some parts of the world have access to the finance, others have no, and if they do, they pay 6-8 times more. So that is what we are focused on at the global level. But coming down to the ground, the question is, how do we help the entrepreneurs, the enterprises, the individuals to mitigate and adapt to the environment that we are in? And this is the biggest one, is knowledge. You can't do that which you don't know. And so awareness is most important. Knowledge on how then to deal. Once you're aware, how do you deal with the situation? The mechanisms. And we have really focused particularly on small-scale farmers, because 70% of livelihoods in Africa are offered by agriculture. But what I have come to appreciate is that nature provides 45% of the wealth of our economies, and 60% of our population are living from nature. So the question is, how do we help enterprises? How do we help individuals to participate in restoration of nature and adapting to the environment because of
exit? Still on course, even with the COVID-19 setback, do you think?
I think COVID set us aside. If you look at what one would call the strategic development goals, sustainable development goals.
Yeah, SDGs.
We are off the mark completely. Most of them we have only achieved 15% yet.
And we've got 7 years to go.
And we have only 7 years to go. So that is the greatest indicator of how impactful COVID is. So the period is shorter. So what we need to do is to increase the effort. And that's what our contribution is, availing finance, affordable finance, and that explains breaded finance, climate finance, bringing all these to bear. But knowledge is also important. But also the last issue is, in the global debate that has been going there, the voice of Africa has been lacking. As a result, the interests of Africa have not been on the table. And so we are supporting debates like loss and damage. Who caused the damage? If we are not to use our fossil fuels, oil and gas, who compensates us for the loss of that to enable the African? If DRC is to preserve the Congo Basin forest, who compensates it for this? If the farmers are to, who rewards them? So bringing equity to carbon credit, for instance, such that there is predictability, is easy for access for everybody, and there is knowledge. So carbon trading is something we have really focused on, helping our governments, having the private sector to develop programs. And that is why we have sought partners so that we could be the bridge in trading carbon in an equitable way. But financing is our core competence.
And using that strength. Thank you
and
for that.
And using the strength and using equity is now the 4th highest rated financial brand on earth. We're using that position globally to put the issues of Africa on the table in the financial sector.
Indeed. Thank you for that, Dr. James Mwangi, using the convening power of Equity Group towards leading a more equitable conversation on matters of sustainability and putting Africa's voice on the map. Thank you very much for joining us on Power Talk.
Thank you very much for having me.